Blog Talk USA. Are you tired of waiting for change?
1012, and it gives me 1,250 feet.
Announced the arrival of their flight from Los Angeles and Chicago.
Explosion. And good Monday morning to TNZ Talk. I am the Z in TNZ Talk. Tony is out today, and I am joined on the phone by Rihanna Peagles.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, well, and, you know, the big news today is it's the first time I'm doing the show on my own. On my own. I mean, I'm doing it with you, Rihanna.
Yay!
But this is kind of a new experience. The last time I did a show by myself, I was 14 years old in high school in Massachusetts, and I was the youngest person in Massachusetts to have an FCC license. So, that was back when you actually needed an FCC license. Yeah, it has been a while. So I'm thinking, my math apparently isn't that good. About 36 years ago was the last, and it was a 10-watt radio station, and I think it barely got to my house to where my mother could hear it. and she was probably one of the 20 some odd listeners that we actually had. Now there were all the kids on the station listened, but it was kind of cool. We had a TV station, we had a radio station right in the high school. It was a 10-watt station, cool. And it was kind of neat. I guess I wanted to get out of junior high school so badly that I've never been satisfied where I am. I always wanted more. I always wanted to be somewhere else, and why am I here? What's going on? I do the same thing. I got a gig writing for the Huffington Post. As a blogger. I mean, I'm one of the unpaid 6,000 bloggers, but they started publishing me on the front pages pretty consistently, and I was going, well, it's only a matter of time before the New York Times calls. Why am I writing for this little rag? Meanwhile, it's one of the biggest newspapers in the country, and it actually gets more readers than the New York Times right now, but, completely dissatisfied. So there is a ton going on. Bernie Sanders got his ass handed to him. Trump is either disavowing or not disavowing. I've got a lot of audio today. I don't even know where to start. So maybe we start with Bernie Sanders. How's that?
How about if I give the phone number real quick?
Oh, yeah.
Before we get started. I want to let everyone know that if you are listening online, we hope you are listening at blogtalkusa.com, and we hope that later on today, if you have not yet done so, please go to TandAndZTalk.com. And if you are listening online and you want to call and make a comment or ask a question, the number to call is 347-855-8118. Okay, go ahead, Z.
And I guess they can also listen on the phone, right? Well, I mean, if they're listening now, that's not going to really help. But if you're listening now on your computer, feel free to listen on the phone. And okay. Think before you open your mouth, Zombek. All right, so Bernie Sanders was asked. Bernie Sanders was asked about his North Carolina loss, and let's just play the clip, and this is how he responded.
We're joined now by Bernie Sanders. He joins this morning. Thank you for joining us, Senator Sanders. Appreciate you being with us this morning. So what do you make of what happened in South Carolina last night? Nearly a 50-point win for Secretary Clinton.
We got decimated, George. We got decimated. The only positive thing for us is we won the 29 years of age and younger vote, and that was good. But we got killed. But I'm in Minnesota now. We think we're going to do very well in Minnesota on Super Tuesday. Colorado, we're going to do well. Oklahoma, we're going to do well. I think we're going to win in Massachusetts, and I believe we're going to win in Vermont, and we're going to do better than people think in other states. George, we began this campaign, as you know, at 3% in the polls, 60 or 70 points behind Secretary Clinton. We have come a very long way. Our message about a rigged economy, rich get richer, everyone else gets poorer, is resonating. And I'll tell you what else is resonating: a corrupt campaign finance system that's allowing billionaires to buy elections. I think we have the momentum. I think it's going to be a tough fight. I think we can win this thing.
Well, and Senator Sanders, from the very start, you've been a straight talker to come right out and say you were decimated. You're continuing that tradition.
Yeah, and he did. So,
Yes, indeed.
And he was. I mean, this is something that I mean, you got to give the guy major props for not trying to spin it, and we're not worried about this. And he lost big time.
Yes.
I mean, she actually got 80% of the black vote in South Carolina compared to Obama, who got 70% of the black vote.
Yes. That was an interesting number.
Yeah, not to bring up a sore subject from my guest appearance on Ron's show this weekend, but Hillary Clinton, her voters didn't vote for her just because she was black. That's for sure.
True.
That is definitely wow. I mean,
that's a fact.
And here's the thing: my question is with Bernie is why? I mean, his history with civil rights and with with segregation issues and everything. Right. I think is actually stronger than hers. I mean, don't you?
I do, and you got to remember though, people like me, and I'm sure you, and I've talked to my co-host Mike Hanley about this as well. We've been following Bernie Sanders for years. I've been watching Brunch with Bernie on Tom Hartman for years. We kind of know what he's all about. And it's easy to forget that, he's really new on the scene, and he is an old Jewish white guy. So, if you don't know anything about him, any one little thing that you might hear, and we know how campaign, not necessarily surrogates, but supporters are slinging mud. Clinton supporters are slinging mud. Sanders supporters are slinging mud the other way. The Republicans are slinging mud. So, yes, I think that Bernie Sanders has an impeccable record on most issues, if not, I'd say most issues. And it's just that if you don't know that and you're up against you've got a choice between Sanders and Clinton, you know who Hillary Clinton is. And you remember her husband playing the saxophone, and, people had a lot more money and things were going okay. So it's tough. But, yeah, I think his record is, I would say it's better on some of those issues.
Well, and Bill Clinton, I mean, the big thing was, America's first black president, right? Bill Clinton.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
And I mean, they do have a lot of pull among minority voters. And the thing is too is that they seem to have, and I don't know. I want to be careful where I go here, but they. And here's the thing, Rihanna, is that this black vote, Hispanic vote, white vote. It still kind of bothers me that in 2016 we're still talking this way. And I understand. I mean, it's just kind of surprising that it still matters. And I think that and I think too is that so now the media, the press can say, well, and this is where it bothers me. And again, I don't know if I'm treading into dangerous waters here, but she wins 80% of the South Carolina black vote. And, typically in America, we look at the South as predominantly black. That's where segregation, the anti-segregation started. That's where, slavery was. and all of that. So we, as a whole, I think Americans, particularly on the coasts, look at the South as, you know, predominantly black, and that's where all the issues come from, right? And the issues are obviously way further out into other parts of the country. But the media kind of take some responsibility on this, because they say, oh, well, you know, she won 80% of the black vote in South Carolina, so that means she's going to sweep the black vote nationally. And those are the kind of comments that bother me, right?
Oh,
is that just because you're black, now you're going to vote for Hillary Clinton, right? And it's like saying, well, and Bernie Sanders brings this up in that last thing too. He says, look, you know, we swept the 29 and under, right? I mean, he won the millennial vote in South Carolina. So what does that say for the rest of the country? Well, they don't say now he's very popular and he's going to sweep amongst millennials, because millennials if they actually came out and voted in droves, he would sweep the national election. And, you know, who knows? Maybe we'll see that on Super Tuesday tomorrow. But, you know, like we've talked about before, Democrats and the Utes are typically, the Utes. They were Utes, Your Honor. The Utes and the Democrats are typically have a typically poor showing.
They stay home
in elections. Right, they stay home.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. I mean, it is bothersome, and that's just hearing that from the mainstream media, which is where, unfortunately, a lot of people get their news, you know, the little blurb that they hear. And if you don't know who the heck Bernie Sanders is, you haven't been paying any kind of attention. And you do see the percentages, you know, from a race like this. It's not, it's not that, you know, I'm accusing anyone of saying, oh, look, 84%, that must be who I need to vote for. But if you're not staying up with things, we're busy. People sometimes don't have time to pay attention. And, you know, we all use, different gauges for you know, making decisions, and that could be one of them. So that bothers me too, and it bothers me that it's so highly focused on, because they're talking about 84% of how many people really, and, you know, people do stay home, and they did stay home in the primaries. So it's misleading. It's like saying Donald Trump has 35% of the support. I've talked to so many people who actually think that means 35% of the country. And I'm like, it's less than 2%, you know. So it's irritating.
Yeah, it's a little higher. So he's got 35% of the GOP vote, and the GOP vote makes up about a third nationally. You know, so what are we talking about here? We're talking about maybe 10, 15% of the vote nationally. Mm-hmm. If not, you actually, your number might be closer. I mean, the fact of the matter is that you could pick a Democrat out of a phone book at this point, and Donald Trump would probably lose. In fact, all the Republicans would lose. But what you said was interesting when you said, you know, he's got 84% and I'm going to vote for him. And there was an interview on CNN. They went out into the crowd in Texas, Ted Cruz's home state, which he is probably not even favored to win. And they were asking people in the crowd, who are you voting for? And I was struck in large part by this one woman who said, well, I'm a big Cruz supporter, but it looks like Donald Trump is going to win, so I'm probably going to vote for Donald Trump.
Oh, my.
Right?
Oh, my.
And you're kind of like, well, why? And thankfully they did ask her a follow-up, and she said, yeah, I don't, you know, I want to back a winner.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What a great reason.
Yeah. Yeah, so it looks like Donald Trump is going to win, so that's who I'm going to vote for. So really all Donald Trump has to do is keep doing what he's doing and saying I'm a winner, And people are going to say, "Oh, well, if he's a winner, then I'm definitely voting for him because I don't want to back a loser."
That's frightening.
So that's where we are. And so, moving on. Donald,
can we?
Donald, not to beleaguer or beleaguer. I don't know. I'm going to have to look that up. Not to beleaguer the Donald Trump meme, but well, he just got Jeff Sessions' endorsement, so he finally picked up an endorsement from a senator of Alabama, which kind of just goes right into our generalizing people and states. And has picked some of the other really wonderful names he's picked up. Dennis Rodman, who is apparently our ambassador to North Korea now.
Sure.
Paul LePage, who BFF with Kim Jong-un.
Yes,
crazy
LePage
little Korean
from
dude
Maine?
with
Paul
LePage from Maine. Has endorsed
crazy
him.
Too. He's crazy too.
Paul LePage?
We can't let that go. Oh yeah.
Oh,
He's
Paul
who
LePage is.
Didn't he make the comments about people coming in and impregnating our perfectly good white girls?
Yeah.
I'm pretty. Yeah. Classy guy.
That's what immigrants were going to do, and wants to drug test welfare recipients and limit the kinds of foods that people can get when they're on food stamps. I think he also cut food stamps to about I want to say 30,000 people in Maine recently because they should just go get a job when the unemployment rate is around 10 or 11%. I could be wrong, but there's a high high number.
Let me point out that the man is shaped like a blueberry, so he's not missing any meals. I just got to throw that out there.
Yeah, no, he's not. And Trump's also got Duncan Hunter, who is the vaping senator. Was on a YouTube video with a vaping and talking about this is the future, is that we're going to be able to vape, whenever we want. And Joe Arpaio, the racist anti-Mexican sheriff from Arizona. Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, sheriff.
Wow.
Defending our rights and protecting people unless you're, not white. And then we got Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin's endorsed Donald Trump too. She was on stage with her typical word salad and rambling and seemingly drunken babbling.
Yeah.
Yeah, and most recently in the news is former Grand Wizard of the KKK, David Duke. David Duke, who said that you are voting against your heritage if you don't vote for Donald Trump.
Oh dear God!
Against your heritage. Your heritage apparently being white supremacy. That is, that's the heritage that. So here's the thing. This is where I have a lot of audio because
I bet
all of this seems. Yeah, well, this all seems really confusing to me. David Duke endorsed Donald Trump. Donald Trump was asked about this, and so I'm trying to figure out the best way to proceed, and possibly the best way to proceed is Donald Trump being asked on CNN yesterday about his about David Duke's endorsement. So let's just listen to that real quick, okay?
I want to ask you about the Anti-Defamation League, which this week called on you to publicly condemn unequivocally the racism of former KKK Grand Wizard David Duke, who recently said that voting against you at this point would be treason to your heritage. will you unequivocally condemn David Duke and say that you don't want his vote or that of other white supremacists in this election?
Well, just so you understand, I don't know anything about David Duke, okay? I don't know anything about what you're even talking about with white supremacy or white supremacists. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know, did he endorse me or what's going on? Because, you know, I know nothing about David Duke. I know nothing about white supremacists. And so you're asking me a question that I'm supposed to be talking about people that I know nothing about.
But I guess the question from the Anti-Defamation League is, even if you don't know about their endorsement, there are these groups and individuals endorsing you. Would you just say unequivocally you condemn them and you don't want their support?
Well, I have to look at the group. I mean, I don't know what group you're talking about. You wouldn't want me to condemn a group that I know nothing about. I'd have to look. If you would send me a list of the groups, I will do research on them. And certainly I would disavow if I thought there was something wrong. But you may have groups in there that are totally fine, and it would be very unfair. So give me a list of the groups, and I'll let you know.
Okay. I mean, I'm just talking about David Duke and the Ku Klux Klan here, but...
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know David Duke. I don't believe I've ever met him. I'm pretty sure I didn't meet him, and I just don't know anything about him.
Okay.
I'm cringing right now. I'm cringing.
Well, so... This is kind of where it gets weird. So he's on CNN yesterday on Sunday, and he's saying, I don't know who David Duke is. And, you know, Trapper actually says, well, the KKK. And that seems like a pretty easy one, right? Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to accept an endorsement from the KKK. That would be ridiculous. And instead, you know, Trump... well, I mean, you know, I don't know who the groups are, and I've never heard of these people, and, you know, I don't know what's going on, and I really can't answer that. So that in and of itself makes no sense to me. What makes even less sense is this clip from Friday. Okay, so let me set this up real quick. Is Sunday, he's on CNN. He's asked about David Duke's endorsement. He says he's never heard of the guy. He's not willing to disavow an endorsement from the KKK because he's got to look at. He doesn't know what. This is a guy that claims that he's got the greatest memory in history. Doesn't know who David Duke is. That's on Sunday. 2 days prior to this interview, he was asked by a reporter at a press conference, and I think the press conference was the Chris Christie endorsement, another one that I forgot to mention earlier. So here's the clip on Friday. Now, when you're listening to this, keep in mind that on Sunday he had no idea what anyone was talking about. And the press has been going nuts that he won't disavow this. And here's Donald Trump 2 days earlier at a press conference.
Mr. Trump, how do you feel about the recent endorsement from David Duke?
I didn't even know he endorsed me. David Duke endorsed me? Okay. All right. I disavow. Okay?
So there you go. I mean,
I didn't know about that one.
Yeah, this is where it gets really weird. So Sunday becomes very and here there are a lot of different issues that I have with this whole kerfuffle, as Tony likes to say, and I'm starting to like it myself.
It's quite a kerfuffle. Yeah,
so now the question becomes, what does he know? Why is he saying what he's saying? He also disavowed that pretty quickly, right?
Oh yes, yes he did.
He just came out, and you know me, right? I'm very particular when it comes to how things are worded, how quickly they're said. You know, I think there's a rhythm to normal speech, and in this case, there was I would have expected more. I didn't know David Duke endorsed me. That seems kind of weird. There's certainly things that he says that I don't agree with. I'm going to disavow. I'm going to distance myself from that. That's not an endorsement that I want. But instead, he's like, I didn't even know he endorsed me. I disavow it, right? And that tells me. I mean, for me, that would be, Zombek's running for president. David Duke endorses him. One of my people comes to me and says, listen, you've been endorsed by David Duke. This just came in. We're going to need to disavow this, right? Mm-hmm. And so Donald Trump does get asked a question, and he goes, I disavow, okay? That's it. I don't. No more questions, right? Yeah. And that's the way it seems. That's the way it seems to me. My wild speculation, maybe. But then on Sunday, he says
he's not sure what white supremacy is.
Yeah,
he doesn't I don't know anything about anything.
Yeah, I don't know who this guy is. I've never heard of him. I don't know. I mean, do you have the greatest memory in the history of the world, or not?
That's incredible. That is just on so many levels so horrible, and I'm not even going to get started because I'm sure you have more audio. I mean, that's just, I thought he was at the very least a decent reality show actor. He's not even that. What the hell was that? I don't know what the KKK is. Well, your dad was in it. I mean, I'm pretty sure you know. At the very least, exactly. I mean, wow. I don't even know what else to say.
It just seems kind of weird. So just one more thing. If you want to call in, if you have a question, 347-855-8118. If you want to join the show, have a question, just press 1 on your keypad so that we know that you want to join in. Okay, so on Friday, during the Chris Christie presser with Chris Christie endorsing Donald Trump, which is actually pretty huge. It's a governor's endorsement. Not only that, but it's important to mention too that Christie was the chairman of the Republican Governors Association. So and there are a lot of Republican governors in this country, way too many for my taste. But I have one in Massachusetts here actually too. So that's a huge endorsement, particularly coming from a guy who hated Donald Trump. I've actually got some audio of that we'll play later. But so somewhere in that mix, Donald Trump then does another interview. I'm not even going to set this up. I'm just going to play it. So here we go.
Let's talk about another issue that has bubbled up, and this is your comments on a CNN program where you were asked about David Duke, former Grand Wizard of the KKK. You said 3 times in this interview, I don't know who David Duke is, and you refused to disavow or distance yourself from him. Now, a lot of people are scratching their heads over that because, number one, you disavowed David Duke 2 days prior. Why are you pretending that you are acting as though you don't know who this person is? Why not disavow David Duke, disavow the KKK? What's going on?
Well, first of all, he talked about David Group and other groups. He talked about other groups.
But you said 3 times, I don't know who David Duke is.
No. Well, I know who he is, but I never met David Duke. So when you talk about it, I never met David Duke.
But in 2000, you refused to run on the Reform Party platform because David Duke was a member of it.
David Duke a day before at a major press conference. And I'm saying to myself, how many times do I have to continue to disavow people? And the question was asked about David Duke and various groups. And I don't know who the groups are. I said, would you do me a favor and tell me the groups? He was unable to tell me that.
He says, I'm just talking about David Duke and the Ku Klux Klan here. And you said, honestly, I don't know David Duke.
Okay, so let me tell you. I'm sitting in a house in Florida with a very bad earpiece that they gave me. And you could hardly hear what he was saying. But what I heard was various groups. And I don't mind disavowing anybody. And I disavowed David Duke. And I disavowed him the day before at a major news conference, which is surprising because he was at the major news conference. CNN was at the major news conference, and they heard me very easily disavow David Duke. Now I go and I sit down again. I have a lousy earpiece that is provided by them, And frankly, he talked about groups. He also talked about groups. And I have no problem with disavowing groups, but I'd at least like to know who they are. It would be very fair to disavow a group, Matt, if the group shouldn't be disavowed. I have to know who the groups are. But I disavowed David Duke. Now, if you look on Facebook, right after that, I also disavowed David Duke. When we looked at it and looked at the question, I disavowed David Duke. So I've disavowed David Duke all weekend long on Facebook, on Twitter, and obviously it's never enough.
Oh, poor Donald. Poor thing.
Well.
Idiot.
I don't know. I mean, what are you thinking?
I'm sorry, this earpiece. I can't hear. What? White supremacy? What? I mean, please. What? Oh, hold on. Let me just twist this in a little more so I can. You don't have to understand or know some specifics. Could you get me these? The specifics on this group. We heard Jake Trapper say white supremacy and KKK. All you needed to hear him say, he just needed to say those things once. But he said them multiple times, and Donald Trump is still, pretending he doesn't know what white supremacy is. He doesn't know what the KKK is. He doesn't know who David Duke is. That's not an earpiece failure. I mean, those things were said multiple times, and to look into look America in the eye and say, yeah, I'm kind of removed from that whole hundreds of years of terrorism that some of our citizens have had to face at the hands of other of our citizens that's just never been atoned for, made up for, talked about, apologized for, nothing. I don't know about that. I'm in Florida. Sorry. What? No. Earpiece is not a good excuse. Oh, he's such an idiot. And a racist, clearly. and then I disavowed David Duke all weekend, except for when you didn't. Because, see, you didn't at one point over the weekend. So, I'm sorry. I call BS on this. Again, with Donald Trump.
Well, okay. So let me play devil's advocate for just a minute.
Okay.
And let's and in that vein, let's pretend we never heard the earpiece part, because I think that was unnecessary and over the top, and that I will call BS on.
Yeah.
I think where I have a problem is Donald Trump did in fact disavow David Duke publicly at that press conference and on Facebook.
Yes.
Okay.
That's true.
On CNN, he did not, for whatever reason. For whatever reason, he did not. But prior to that, he had, and he did on Facebook. And rather than covering the entire thing and getting to the bottom of it and finding out what really happened and asking the right questions like reporters should do, they don't. And
I agree.
All the headlines are Donald Trump will not disavow David Duke, right? Which makes for a great headline, but it's not really the full story.
Right.
And this is, I'm not defending Donald Trump. Don't get me wrong.
No. You're pointing out how we skirt the issue. You're right. There's a skirting the real issue.
Well, we're not getting to the truth, right? And then that leads to a whole other thing. Is why aren't we digging into Trump University and Trump Airlines and Trump casinos and Trump mortgages and all of that, all of which were failed businesses from everyone who looks at this and goes, he's one of the greatest businessmen in the world, and if he can run a business the way he runs a business, then he can run the country just like he runs a business, and we're going to be all set. when in fact almost everything that Donald Trump has touched has been a complete and utter failure.
Yes.
Including marriages.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
I mean, bankruptcy after bankruptcy after bankruptcy, business failure after business failure after business failure. He is not a good businessman. And in fact, he got. Rubio claims that it was $200 million from his father. It was $1 million that Trump got from his father. And if Trump had actually, when he got that money, invested it in non-volatile loans. Stocks or bonds or CDs. He'd actually have more billions today than he does right now.
That's right.
He'd be richer if he had just done a very conservative investment than he did playing around with this and failing left and right. So really, the guy's a phenomenal marketer. He's very good at self-promotion, something that I suck at. And
he's a good prostitute for himself. He sells himself. That's what he is.
He's a self-pimper.
Yeah, exactly. He's a 2-in-1 prosto pimp. Yeah. You get more bang for your buck that way.
I got to write that down.
I'll text it to you.
Bang was an unfortunate use of words there.
My apologies.
You get more bang for our apologies to all the prostitutes out there.
Yes.
And pimps. Let's not forget the pimps.
Yes, I don't mean to disparage any of you. Please, I'll make up a new word.
That's right. We need your business, and if you'd like to advertise on TNZ Talk, you can go to our website. Actually, let me give the website. It is TNZ Talk, AND, so TNZTalk.com. Everything's there. Our Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, iTunes, everything. We also have a support page. You can go there, find out how to support us. Believe it or not, it's not just financial support. We also need your support with ratings, giving us 5 stars on iTunes, and as it happens, I actually had to create a how-to video on how to rate us on iTunes because their system for a company that's all about cool, easy to use, user-friendly interface, their system for rating on iTunes is so convoluted that I actually had to create a video how-to that walks you through the steps of rating us on iTunes, on the web, and on your iTunes podcast app. It's really weird how screwy that system is to be able to rate people. But anyway, go to our website, tnztalk.com. Our archives are there, and any way that you need to follow us, friend us, love us, like us, blah, blah, blah. That's the other thing is just social media. I can't even believe. I mean, every time I post something, I've got LinkedIn and Tumblr and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Pinterest, and it's just like, oh, my God. So we do need your financial help because I need to hire someone to help me do this. So it's incredibly time-consuming. Anyway, back to Donald Trump. So this whole, I know, unfortunately, we're going to talk about Trump some more. So, I mean, this the whole idea of this, and this happened with Bernie Sanders too, right, is, and I went on a rant about this last week when you and I were on the show, is, Jonathan Capehart from the Washington Post running with a story about Bernie Sanders that made it look like he was faking a photograph and that he really wasn't part of the Stopping Segregation march and stuff in Chicago at the University of Chicago, and doesn't retract it, doesn't correct it, doesn't say, hey, other things have come up, I might have been wrong. And this is kind of the same thing. And again, I'm not defending Trump, but if we're gonna make informed decisions in this, we rely on a media and a press that is going to give us the truth and tell us what's really going on. Because I mean, I watch the news all the time, right? Which is something people don't have a lot of time to do. And you know, here we are going, well, this happened, then this happened, then this happened, and putting the pieces together. And you know, why isn't CNN, MSNBC, and you know, Fox for that matter, going, well, look, here's the course of the events. Here's the timeline in which they happened, and decide for yourself. But this is what actually happened, and you know, feel free to decide this on your own. And I have theories about why the press doesn't cover it, but it looks like we have a caller, and hopefully I know how to do this, and I'm not sure I really do. So maybe you can tell me, or maybe you can take over, and I'll just hit the microphone. Okay, I will hit the microphone. Hello, caller.
Hello. How y'all doing this morning?
Hey there. Good morning.
Good. If you could just give us a little introduction, first name or however you want to introduce yourself, and welcome to TNZ Talk.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me. Yes, sir. My name is D, and I wanted to go back. I had a comment on the Donald Trump issue. One of the concerns I had with the report that was actually written by, I think it was Christina Coburn, that was on February the 8th, concerning Donald Duke. Donald Duke. He might as well be Donald Duck, but Donald Trump is when he was quoted in the article is also saying, this is what kind of bothered me. When this show's over, go out, call the Republican Party, but call Donald Trump's headquarters. Volunteers, said David Duke. They're screaming for volunteers. Go in there. They're going to meet people who are going to have the same kind of mindset that you have, which begs me to ask myself, because I always wonder why this guy can say the things he's saying, gets away with, and still win delegates. So I would kind of like to know how y'all felt about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Good question. And well, so how do we feel? How do we feel about that? There are a lot of racists in the country, but I think the question was more to, you know, how are the delegates continuing to support him, right? And that's an excellent question, and that kind of goes back to the let's call it non-Southern friendly comment that I almost made earlier, right? Is that Jeff Sessions from Alabama endorsed Donald Trump, and now are we can make two assumptions on that when it relates to racism. One, we can assume that Jeff Sessions is a racist, and endorses Donald Trump strictly because of Donald Trump's purported views on racism and black people and people of color.
Yes.
Or the other assumption we can make is that the racism is such a part of the culture and so ingrained in the daily thinking of, let's say for the sake of this argument, Jeff Sessions, that it almost doesn't matter, right? That it just, I mean, take the rebel flag, for example, right? You see that thing waving around all the time. You know that racism is prevalent. You just become used to it. And it's like, well, yeah, of course there's racism here. We're in the South. We're in South Carolina, and we've got that flag up there. And granted, it makes us uncomfortable when it comes to racism, but really it's about our proud heritage of, being a strong Southern community. Right, yeah. And if you vote for Donald Trump, if you don't vote for Donald Trump, you're voting against your heritage. So it really kind of gets, I mean, it's a good question from D, and I don't really know how to answer it, because my initial response would be, well, because they're racist, right? But I like to give people benefit of the doubt, and if I'm going to give people benefit of the doubt, then I say, well, racism is part of the culture there. We all agree that it shouldn't be, but it is, and if you're raised that way and you're living like that, you go, yeah, I mean, sure, Donald Trump's a racist, but who isn't? I mean, my uncle's a racist, but I love him. My grandpappy was, was in the KKK, So I think when it comes to delegates, I'm going to use the term unfair for lack of a better term. If we're going to if we're going to give people benefit of the doubt, and we're going to, and I'm even sickened. I'm sickening myself by saying this. If we're going to give the benefit of the doubt to people, and say, and the question is valid because the rest of us that didn't grow up, well, me for example, that didn't grow up with blatant racism and very prevalent racism, go, oh my God! I mean, how can this guy even? I mean, he's supposed to represent the entire country. Yeah. But if you don't grow up like that, and you grow up where racism is just an accepted fact, which I'm gonna add shouldn't be.
Of course. But
if you grow up like that and you go, yeah, okay, I mean, yeah, he's got that against him, but what's the big? I know a lot of racists, and they're actually good people. They just grew up that way, and they haven't gotten out of that mindset. So It's
and
not
again,
a,
that's not you
answer.
saying that. That's you saying
right.
that from the point of view of giving someone. Now, you have successfully twisted yourself into quite a pretzel, and I applaud your effort for trying very, very, very hard to give benefit of the doubt to that point of view. I am from the South, however, so I will just go ahead and say that as simple as it sounds, yeah, it's a racist thing and a white supremacy thing. All those things that Donald Trump pretends that he doesn't understand. Yeah, that's what it's all about. And, there was a time where David Duke, an endorsement from David Duke, or, any white supremacist group, the KKK, whatever, a public endorsement was a poison pill. That was political suicide to accept something like that. We've been watching the Republican Party at large and different candidates just openly accept money from white supremacist groups. The first story I saw about it was months ago. I mean, no one is saying the Republican Party, the party of Lincoln. They like to remind us that they're the party of Lincoln. They're the party that was for civil rights, blah, blah, blah. They always forget the part where, there was that whole switchover thing, and that's no longer that party, and they are the Southern Strategy Party. They are the party where, the racists all flock to. There's a home there for you. And, at this point, because the Republican Party is so fractured and fragmented and divided, until the other day, not one of the Republicans has stood up, even just if they were faking it, from the very first racist thing that happened, from the very first time that we heard that a white supremacist group is endorsing this candidate or that candidate. When Steve Scalise got into office, and we found out that he spoke at a white supremacist group years before, and that he, ran on, I'm the electable David Duke. All of that. No one in that party stood up and said, no, this is the party of Lincoln. That's not who we are. That's not where we're going. Not one of them. So, they have been digging this hole. And now, here we are. It's safe to say we're dealing with a bunch of racists. And they don't seem to mind. I've been saying over and over, they are just running around butt naked, flying their racist freak flag, and they don't care who sees it. It's gross, and that's what it is.
And here's the thing, though, right? Is that argument kind of assumes then? Okay, so let me back up a little bit. So we can't assume that the delegates are completely stupid, and we could. They're endorsing, they're putting their support behind Donald Trump, so they very well could be just complete morons. But they're also aware that there's a whole other part of the country, and they're probably aware that racism is bad, right? So we really can't give the excuse to the delegates that, they have an uncle who's racist and he's a perfectly nice guy, because they know that supporting Donald Trump who supposedly did not disavow David Duke, would be a bad move, and at least their handlers would say, hey, listen, until he disavows David Duke, we really can't put our support behind him, right? You would think that conversation was going on in there. And,
you would think.
But if they have, but Rihanna, what if they have access to the same information that we do, where it shows that Donald Trump did, in fact, disavow David Duke, right? Donald Trump can't be held responsible for getting the endorsement of the KKK. That would be wrong too. So I mean, this question that Dee brings up is, I mean, it's a very good question, and it's worth looking into. But I think if all we know is that Donald Trump did, which is all that the headlines are showing, that all Donald Trump did was not disavow David Duke, and then we go, well, then why the hell are these delegates supporting him anyway? Then that's a very good question. But if the fact of the matter is that he did disavow David Duke, then there's really no reason not to support a candidate simply because the KKK supported them. I mean, it can't be helped who supports them.
Yeah, I see exactly what you're saying, and that's what they did. Remember when we found out that the guy who started the white supremacist group or the neo-Nazi group, it was a white supremacist group that where Dylan Roof ended up stumbling on that website and reading their propaganda, and then we found out that guy had sent a bunch of money to the Republican Party and has been donating to the Republican Party and Republican governors for a long time. And that's sort of that's what Ted Cruz and a few others were saying at that time, that, now that you've pointed this out, I'll give the money back or whatever, but I can't, it's a free country. I can't stop someone from donating money or saying that they endorse me or whatever. So that's a valid point. That's a totally valid point. And I'd also like to point out, it also kind of goes, the way the media has framed this, about disavowing David Duke and not throwing in, the other things. It sort of goes to what we were saying about, people don't have time to dig into the news. They see a media headline. Some of them are already distrustful of mainstream media. And then they hear Donald Trump say, disavowed him 50 times, and they go to Donald Trump's Facebook and they see that, in fact, he did. And so then we've got, that whole dynamic. So, yeah, I see what you're saying. So, and I was kidding about twisting into a pretzel earlier, but no, you do make, you make a valid point. And it's a huge question and a good question. And something, unfortunately, it seems like people aren't thinking about too much. It's so easy to grab a bumper sticker or a little tagline, and Donald Trump is full of them. And in these cases, he's right. He technically did disavow David Duke. Forget about the fact of all that he ignored. He technically did.
Well,
so he wins again.
And I also, I watched a guy today on MSNBC of all places, a reporter talk about the earpiece thing and said on camera live, we all know how troublesome and what a pain those earpieces can be, right? So, and this is from MSNBC, right? Well, I mean, this is going to take some time to get to the bottom of it, and I don't want to defend Donald Trump. I mean, that's the last thing I want to do.
Right.
But having been a reporter in the South, actually, I was a reporter in North Carolina back when newspapers were printed on paper, and I do want to defend the truth. And we don't know all the truth right now, but what we do know is that on Friday, Donald Trump disavowed David Duke. On Sunday, he didn't understand the question. On Monday, on this morning, he said he was having trouble with his earpiece. and the media confirmed that you can have trouble with your earpiece. So,
and still manage to avoid talking about anything real, anything of substance, any failures of Donald Trump in any way.
Well, why would he? Listen, I want to play one more clip. This is from John Oliver's show yesterday on this very topic.
Donald Trump can seem appealing until you take a closer look, much like the lunch buffet at a strip club, or the NFL, or having a pet chimpanzee. Sure, it seems fun, but someday Coco's going to tear your fucking limbs off. Because let's look at each of those qualities those people listed. First, he tells it like it is. Does he? Because the website PolitiFact checked 77 of his statements and rated 76% of them as varying degrees of false. And I've witnessed this firsthand. He once attacked my old boss by tweeting, if Jon Stewart is so above it all and legit, why did he change his name from Jonathan Leibowitz? He should be proud of his heritage. And then 2 years later wrote, I never attacked dopey Jon Stewart for his phony last name, would never do that. And then just last year he claimed falsely to have turned down an invite to appear on this very boring show. And who's he trying to impress with that lie? Our show's guests include sloths and puppies. We're basically a petting zoo with a desk. But when we pointed out that he had never been invited, this is how he responded.
All of a sudden I see people saying that John Oliver, and I'm saying, John Oliver? And I checked with my people. He asked me to be on the show 4 or 5 times. And I don't even hardly know who he was. I wouldn't know what he looks like.
Well, look, first, I wouldn't expect him to know who I was, although for his inevitable angry tweet about this segment, I'll tell him what I look like. I look like a nearsighted parrot who works at a bank. But secondly, it was genuinely destabilizing to be on the receiving end of a lie that confident. I even checked to make sure that no one had even accidentally invited him. And of course they hadn't. And I'm not even sure he knows he's lying. I think he just doesn't care about what the truth is.
There we go.
Oh, my.
John Oliver. Yeah. And this is, this is where we're getting our real news these days is,
exactly
from comedy shows, because they actually research the background instead of just going with a headline, and it's a little disappointing for the rest of the media. So
it is.
Listen, I am going to wrap up the show. Once again, this is TNZ Talk. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Do you mind
Brianna?
if we? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay. Do you mind if we take one more quick comment from D? He has a follow-up comment.
Sure thing, of course.
Before we wrap. Okay, great. D, your line's open.
Okay, yes, thank you. Thank y'all for being objective about it. And the reason why I'm thanking y'all is because if you remember, when you go back, you remember that Ben Carson was also endorsed.
Yeah.
I think this was 2000, in between 2010 and 2012 by a neo-Nazi group, and they were saying that he'd probably be the better pick. For right now, because of his views on abortion and being pro-life and things of that nature. But I guess the thing that differs between a normal person and, let's say, Donald Trump, if Donald Trump doesn't generally like something, there's no room for error as far as mixing his words. If you ask him about, I don't know, let's say Muslims coming to America, he's very clear on it, crystal clear. Whether he's talking about the border, it's crystal clear. But it kind of amazes me that he kind of, and I get the point of not disavowing, but to act like he don't even know who David Duke is, or when they were asked the questions on MSNBC, about the Klan and white supremacy, when he kept saying, what groups, the man clearly said white supremacist groups. So, but thank you all for your time. Great show.
Hey, thanks.
Thank you, Dee. Okay, and once again, this is TNZ Talk for Monday, February 29th. Check us out at our website at tnztalk.com. Facebook, everything. I want to thank you, Rihanna, for coming on today and filling in for Tony, and being part of the show. It's great having you here, and I want to thank. I don't know what I'm doing here. I want to thank Ron Spikes of Blog Talk USA and the entire network. And as Tony likes to say, that does it for us today, and we wish that you be well.